Republicans want universal health care too. We just need a way to get somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene to propose it. If it's their idea, then it isn't socialism. Okay, maybe I'll talk about this in a separate video. I am simultaneously fascinated and horrified by Marjorie Taylor Greene's attempt to revamp her image and distance herself from Trump. She thinks it's going to get her elected, senator, governor of Georgia? I think that Marjorie is far more politically savvy than a lot of people have given her credit for, but that's a separate issue. Let's get back to this, Republicans want universal health care too. Yeah, they do. McCarthyism, the Red Scare, and then Rush Limbaugh have done a fantastic job of making everybody in America, particularly anybody on the political center or right, deathly afraid of the word socialism. That's why, for, the last 10 years on my YouTube channel, anytime I talk about the permaculture ethic of fair share and how when you take that ethic and combine it with the ethic of people care, you can see very quickly that there is a permaculture justification for universal health care. Now, permaculture is inherently political. Bill Mollison, who founded it in the 1970s, was quite radical. But in the last, 10 or 15 years or so, we have seen a lot of kind of doomsday preppers, libertarians, the kind of off the grid self-sufficiency, homestead, Mormon, have your giant stacked pantry types, take a little bit here and there from permaculture and think that they are practicing it, but they love to completely ignore a third of the ethics of permaculture, right? The three ethics are earth care, people care, and fair share. And actually, a lot of these libertarian prepper types, they really do a terrible job of living out or even comprehending any of the ethics at all. They think that permaculture is hippie gardening, prepper gardening, a self-sufficiency movement, when permaculture is entirely about community interdependence. And boy, they do not like the fact that fair share is a key component of permaculture because it sounds like socialism to them. In fact, calling it fair share makes them so uncomfortable that they like to rephrase it as share the surplus, so it feels like tithing to them, or oh yeah, I have a little bit extra and I could just share a little bit. But they get to decide what is enough for them and what is extra. It's a very capitalistic, libertarian perspective. They really don't like to look at the fact that Bill Mollison originally described the third ethic as set limits to consumption. They do not like that, but when you look at limiting consumption so that there is enough to go around, so that we don't take more than our fair share, we don't extract more from the planet than she can provide, and we give back to her. And at the same time, we don't hoard resources while others go without. These are not hard concepts to understand in permaculture. Although I found that even after 25 years practicing it, I've never fully plumbed the depths of all of the ways that the three ethics work together to help us craft a more sustainable, not just sustainable, but regenerative and abundant vision for how we can organize society, the way that we interact with each other and with the planet. But I personally think, and yes, okay, I did shamelessly take a little tangent here so that I could talk about permaculture. It is the name of my channel, and I spend so much time talking about politics because we can't really live out earth care, people care, and then I can't live out fair share without taking my platform and using a fair share of it to advocate for democracy and for the lives of the people and the future of the planet, both of which are being targeted by the Trump regime. I personally see fair share as me using the resources that I have, the time that I have, the platform that I have to advocate for democracy, against injustice, against the cruelty, inhumanity, and brutality of this regime. And not only that, but I want to use my platform to encourage people to believe in the truth that we can organize a more just and effective society where we have a higher quality of life, where we have our needs met, where the American dream is something that we can actually experience, every single one of us. It doesn't have to be 300 plus million Americans, 340 million Americans suffering while a few hundred of these guys up here, fuck all of us, hoard massive quantities of resources and we do without. I really try to use my platform to help people see that we can organize together to build that future that we all want and deserve. And I really think universal healthcare is part of this. Look at all of the other countries that have it, right? You don't see other countries that have universal healthcare that are oh shit, we should go back to the for-profit model. We should look at what America's doing. We should copy that. We don't see that at all. And I do think it's interesting how many wealthy members of Congress either have worked for for-profit healthcare, have tons of stock in for-profit healthcare, are lobbied heavily by for-profit healthcare. This is why we don't have universal healthcare in this country. I'm a big supporter of healthcare for all in Oregon. We are trying to get a constitutional amendment here that healthcare is a human right and that everybody in our state should have access to universal healthcare. But when you're talking about this, like, how do we frame it so it doesn't sound like socialism? Because anybody who's on the political right is like terrified of the word socialism because of McCarthyism, because of Rush Limbaugh, and just the absolute poisoning of this term, so that they don't understand what it means, right? Mike Johnson and Donald Trump, they use the terms communism and socialism completely interchangeably, and it just means to them, not what it actually means. Either communism or socialism, when they use those, they mean like a totalitarian state where you have no free will and the government controls everything and you are in a state of constant deprivation and suffering. That's what conservatives think when they hear socialism, but they don't understand that that's what Donald Trump is doing currently in the United States to all of us. He's bringing about that version. Like, they hear the word socialism and what they conceptualize in their, I was going to say little brains. That's not fair. In their brains is fascism. They've conflated these two terms. They don't understand what socialism actually is. And they definitely don't understand what democratic socialism is. And I've had this conversation with a number of conservative relatives that I have, but also with people online. When we talk about universal health care, I'm like, oh, don't you know about Obamacare? Don't you know where the inspiration for that came from? It came from a Republican. It came from Mitt Romney. In 2006, Massachusetts enacted Romney Care because Mitt Romney was the governor at the time. It gave basically everybody in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts access to health insurance. When you talk about the funding of universal health care, when you talk about the fact that it lowers healthcare costs for all of us, provides greater access, and can be done in a sustainable way, if you frame it carefully and you try not to use words that tick off folks on the right, like Obamacare. So many MAGA don't understand that Affordable Care Act and Obamacare are the same thing. Just like they've been taught to be afraid of the word socialism, they've been taught that Obamacare is terrible and it basically is socialism, but the Affordable Care Act, that's where they get subsidies. That's where they are allowed to get health insurance even though they've got pre-existing conditions. That's how they're able to afford to have health insurance in a country with completely unsustainable, exploitive for-profit healthcare. And I do think that there is a unifying potential here, no matter what your political persuasion is, unless you are directly benefiting from for-profit healthcare. You probably were a fan of Mario's brother, and you also definitely want universal healthcare. If you talk about what it actually is and you don't use these kinds of words like Medicare for all or universal healthcare or Obamacare, then yeah, people across the board want it. So how do you get somebody on the right to talk about it so that they think it's their idea? I don't know. That's a good question, but let's not make Marjorie Taylor Greene. No. But again, when we're talking about working class solidarity, when we're talking about what all of us in America deserve, this is something that's really popular and I think could be a unifying factor. I wish more Democrats would get on board. I think this is the time. As we are watching Republicans destroy the ACA, kick tens of millions of people off Medicaid, as we are watching people's premiums go through the roof from $40 a month to sometimes $4,000 a month for premiums. Now is the time to talk about how ridiculous our system is. It's broken. It's not working for us. Permaculture is all about really strategic, effective design so that human beings can have a better quality of life that is not only sustainable, it's regenerative. So universal healthcare, now I think is the time. What we have in this moment in terms of our healthcare disaster, completely unsustainable. Lots of people are going to suffer and die, but it doesn't have to be this way. Gosh, I wish Democrats could see this is a golden opportunity to save lives, to reform the system into something that actually meets our needs. Why can't we organize our society around having our needs met instead of CEOs raking in billions of dollars? This, I think, is something that could bring us all together, something we could organize for, we could find unity around, and we could make it a reality. It's only wealthy CEOs who are holding us back.